What's going on YouTube? So today we're going to be talking about the Canon 5D Mark V and if Canon ever decides to actually make this camera or if it's in the works or anything like that. Why do I think that this camera would be absolutely amazing? And the answer is because the Canon R5, that sensor is absolutely crazy, but it has a couple small downfalls, or small but big if you want to take it as such. I honestly think that this camera is going to have a lot of amazing features if Canon decides to create this camera. So some of the features in the R5 are 45 megapixel sensor, face and eye autofocus, the IBIS that I don't think would be in this camera, 8K video, 8K raw video I should say, the 4K at 120, 4K at 60, 4K at 24. The list goes on and on. Obviously C-Log, the new card slots as well. The OVF that I personally love, the optical viewfinder. I'm still not too big of a fan of the EVF, but that OVF is absolutely amazing and this camera would have that. Let's talk about the reason that the 5D Mark V would be an amazing camera and absolutely destroy even the R5, because of the fact that the 5D Mark V is a bigger body and it would allow Canon to potentially add in a bigger heat sink or something along those lines to help dissipate that heat and prevent the 5D Mark V from overheating, because that's clearly an issue with the Canon R5 right now. So maybe if they could put a bigger heat sink or just more space in general would prevent the camera from overheating totally, or you would get more record time for that. Instead of like 15-20 minutes, you could get like an hour, maybe an hour and a half of constant recording. And in my opinion, that would be honestly the perfect camera, especially with all the different features that the R5 has. Let's talk about the price of the 5D Mark V if they do release it. I think it's going to be very comparable to the Canon R5 because that just would make sense, or maybe a couple $100 more expensive because of the added heat sink, but I think that would be an honest steal in my opinion, and I don't see why it would be an issue for that price. If you did have to sacrifice the IBIS in the 5D Mark V, then so be it. In my personal opinion, that I think this camera would be ideal even without the IBIS. Obviously, the IBIS is welcome if possible, but if you couldn't get it into the 5D Mark V, so be it. In my personal opinion, I don't think it's an absolute necessity, but it would be clutch. Who would this camera be for if the Canon R5 is already out? And I honestly think that it would be for anybody who's taking video a little bit more seriously, because as y'all know, the R5 has the record limit and overheating issues. So if you want to do video a little bit more serious, then that would be the ideal camera to get if it didn't have that record limit. Or anybody that's shooting like sports, or anybody that's shooting flash photography and things like that, like strobe shots, it'd be ideal. If they could keep the 20 frames a second, that would be absolutely mind-blowing. Like, I don't even know why someone would use something like that unless you're shooting sports or like super fast action. Even if they could get it up to like 10 frames a second, I think that is perfectly usable, and that's something that you would use in the real world unless you're shooting like sports. But for me, I honestly think that would be the most ideal thing to have. That's who I would think that would use it mostly. Obviously, like all the wedding shooters and stuff like that would be jumping to it. Anybody who would purchase the R5, in my opinion, would use the 5D Mark V. And you have to remember that this is a photography camera first, and it just has video features tacked on. And a lot of people have just been talking about the video features and like, oh, this is a bad camera because the video features aren't the greatest. And it's like, well, it's actually a photography camera. It's not a cinema camera at all. So if that's specifically what you want, get a cinema camera. Don't get a photography camera that shoots video. My final thoughts about this camera are that if Canon decided to make this 5D Mark V, that it would absolutely be amazing, especially if they could figure out that whole overheating situation. And I honestly think that this camera would be like the king of all Canon cameras. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, for that 5D Mark V, which is kind of a crazy number to, I guess, kill off this series with, especially because DSLRs are kind of dying. It's a dying breed, everything's going mirrorless, so I think Canon should make one more to end it at the 5D Mark V, and that's just my opinion. What are your thoughts? Leave it down in the comments below. If you have any questions, let me know, and don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe. Until the next video, peace.